It's time for Lefties Losing It, and sad news for the leftist activists masquerading as journalists at the Washington Post, with hundreds of jobs slashed across its newsroom after the paper lost $77 million US in 2023 and $100 million in 2024. I'd have a little more sympathy for those job losses if it weren't for the fact that the Washington Post is nothing but a propaganda outlet for the Democrats, pumping out endless misinformation, always in the same direction, and they were guilty of pushing the Russian collusion hoax. Here's just 30 seconds of the fake news that the Washington Post pumped out and the rest of the media ate up.
Russian President Vladimir Putin gave direct instructions to help elect Donald Trump president. According to a Washington Post investigation, former President Obama received a secret CIA report in August. That report, quote, captured Putin's specific instructions on the operation's audacious objectives, defeat or at least damage the Democratic nominee Hillary Clinton.
This morning, the Washington Post is reporting that U.S. intelligence agencies had sourcing deep inside the Russian government, capturing Putin's direct instructions in the operation.
Maybe a good idea to learn how to code. Now, let's look at some of the indoctrination happening in American schools. Look at how these young children are being taught to hate and protest against the president.
No Donald Trump! 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 No Donald Trump!
You know, that reminds me of going to school in Iran, in Tehran, and being forced to chant "Death to America" at school assembly. That's what blue cities are turning into. And it doesn't get much better when the kids are in high school. Here are more brainwashed kids protesting ICE and Trump.
Yeah, Donald Trump, I ain't vote for this page, rolling pretty pink box to my minds of that shit.
But this has to be my favourite anti-ICE protest. This is just so stunning and brave. The sacrifice these lefties are making is profound.
We all got drinks without ice because ice.
Ice! What the
Ice! Cheers! Ice!
Time to check in now on the Vice President, J.D. Vance, schooling yet another TV anchor. This just gets tiresome after a while.
Did you plan to apologize to the family of Alex Preddy?
For what?
For, labeling him an assassin with ill intent.
Well, again, I just described to you what I said about Alex Preddy, which is that he's a guy who showed up with ill intent to an ICE protest.
No, but if it's
he's
determined that his civil rights were violated by this FBI investigation, will you apologize to that?
So if this hypothetical leads to that hypothetical leads to another hypothetical,
it's a real case.
Will I do a thing?
Now, it seems the Vice President has grown weary of doing interviews with dim-witted anchors on CNN, NBC, CBS, etc., etc., interviews that are watched by a dwindling audience. So he went where the eyeballs are in 2026. He sat down with Megyn Kelly. Here he talks about the media and their refusal to cover what has been an astonishing story, the dramatic drop in violent crime in the past 12 months, including an almost 20% drop in the murder rate. Assaults are down, theft is down, but the media has all but buried the story.
You asked about the crime. Okay, why is the crime rate so low? There are a lot of reasons. One is that we've empowered local law enforcement. Another reason is because we've deported a lot of criminals in the United States that should have never been here in the first place because they were illegal aliens. So the media cannot even express an ounce of nuance. It's never, oh, well, maybe we disagree with this. Let's have a conversation about that. But let's tell the truth about the fact that there are Americans who are alive today because of Donald Trump's crime and immigration policies. They can't do that. It's always just shouting, angry all the time. You're Gestapo, you're the fascist. And it's just crazy. And it does the American people a real disservice.
And the Vice President weighed in on the arrest of Don Lemon after that storming of a church in Minnesota. JD did not hold back.
You mentioned the press a minute ago. Someone who claims to be a member of it is Don Lemon, who's been arrested now.
The dumbest man in television?
Yeah, I mean, that's
formally
saying something. He's under arrest because he stormed a church in the middle of a Sunday service, along with a lot of other rioters, and disrupted people trying to worship. He's trying to cloak himself in the First Amendment, saying this is an attack on freedom of the press. And you say what?
Well, I say first, Don, No one's objecting to you standing outside of a church and protesting. No one's objecting to you no one's saying you can't protest the Trump administration's immigration policies, or frankly, our policies on anything else. What you cannot do is go into somebody's house of worship and prevent them from exercising their First Amendment right to the free exercise of religion. And that's what happened. By the way, there's a federal law on the books that says you're not allowed to interrupt churches. You're not allowed to prevent people from entering or leaving a church. And the Biden administration aggressively prosecuted people. Where was Don Lemon when people were getting aggressively prosecuted for sham violations of the FACE Act? We have a rock solid violation of the FACE Act, which is you were sticking a microphone in the face of a minister during the church service while the people you were with were preventing people from leaving. That's a violation of the law. That's not about the First Amendment.
Let's bring in president of the Center of the American Experiment and co-founder of the popular Powerline blog, John Hinderaker. The mayhem is happening in your home state. ICE is operating around the US, but it's only in Minnesota that we are seeing this sort of violent uprising on a regular basis, with law enforcement being obstructed, being attacked. And we also had this storming of a church that has led to the arrest of Don Lemon.
Yeah, the reason, Rita, is that our elected officials, starting with Governor Tim Walz and Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, are openly encouraging the rioting and the interfering with ICE's efforts to apprehend illegal aliens, which of course is a federal crime. These officials are trying to make it impossible to enforce federal law in Minnesota. It is very much like what states like South Carolina did in the years leading up to the Civil War. Tim Walz has even talked publicly about being at war with the federal government. It has referred to Fort Sumter, which of course is where the Civil War began, when South Carolina troops fired on a Union fort. And Tim Walz is actually invoking that. So the reason why things are so crazy in Minnesota, at least the primary reason, is because our elected officials are actively encouraging the lawlessness.